Britain has unveiled plans to introduce stricter asylum measures in a controversial bid to regain control of its borders. The Interior Minister Shabana Mahmood outlined what the Labour government calls the most sweeping reforms in decades, which include tougher rules on refugee status and new interpretations of human rights laws aimed at accelerating deportations. There has been growing public concern over immigration and a surge in support for the populist Reform UK party, which is putting pressure on the government to take a tougher stance. Ministers say the changes will restore control, while critics, including some in the Labour Party, warn that they risk deepening divisions and weakening human rights protections. Let's take a listen to some of what the Interior Minister, Shabana Mahmood, said earlier in the British Parliament.
What I've said already on these matters is that we have a proper problem that it is our moral duty to fix. Our asylum system is broken. The breaking of that asylum system is causing huge division across our whole country. It is a moral mission for me to resolve that division across our country. I know that the reforms I will be setting out later on today can fix this system, and in doing so can unite what is today a divided country.
All right, let's go now to our correspondent in London, Birgit Maass. Birgit, the British government calling this the most substantial reform to the UK's asylum system in a generation. Give us an overview of what is about to change.
The UK government wants to reduce the number of people that they need to support, and they want to decrease what they call the pull factor. They want to make it less attractive for people to come to the UK in the first place, and they want to make it easier to deport them. So what they are announcing is that the refugee status is going to be temporary, so it needs to be renewed every 2.5 years, and a permanent settlement can only be reached in 20 years. That's a very significant increase in the number of years where people can become permanent citizens or permanent resident status. They also want to make it much easier to deport people, and that includes families with children who so far have a more protected status, and they want to renegotiate human rights law, the European Court of Human Rights, also in order to make it easier to deport those people who have failed with their asylum application.
Birgit, why is this reform? Why is it happening now?
The Home Secretary said that the asylum system is broken and that she wants to restore order, and one reason behind it is the rise of what's called a populist party on the right, Nigel Farage's Reform Party. They have been surging in the polls. Interestingly, Nigel Farage was one of the leading lights in the Brexit campaign, and I think that's another reason why the government picks this up. During the Brexit referendum, it was promised that the UK would take back control. So the expectation was that once the UK leaves the European Union, that the freedom of movement would end, and that would also lead to a fall in migration. But that hasn't happened. So net migration in the UK has been rising in recent years, and that also includes people who are coming across the channel in what's called small boats. So the Conservative Party, obviously also Nigel Farage's Reform Party, they have been taking this on, and now also the Labour Party.
The government says that it has looked to Denmark's refugee policy as a model for these reforms. Why is that?
Denmark also has a social democratic government, and they have some of the strictest asylum rules in Europe. For example, the jewellery of asylum seekers can be seized, and this is something that also the UK government is possibly seeking to emulate. And in Denmark, the government says, the UK government says, who have studied Denmark quite closely, they say this has been successful, and it's the lowest number of asylum application in 40 years. And I've had a look at the polls, and the Social Democratic Party of Denmark, which is in the government, they have a clear lead in the polls. So I think this is also something that the Labour government would like to emulate.
Birgit Maass for us in London tonight. Birgit, as always, thank you. Well, as we heard there, it's not just the UK and Denmark. Several European governments have been tightening their asylum laws in recent years. Here in Germany, the government is also working on reforming its asylum system to curb irregular migration. Germany's Interior Minister, Alexander Dobrindt, told DW News that any abuse of the individual right to asylum must be combated as effectively as possible.
No,
I don't think I need to review the individual right to asylum. There's an ongoing debate about it, I'd say a scientific debate at the European level, over whether there are alternatives to the individual right to asylum that are more practical, better, fairer.
Praktikabler und besser wäre, auch fairer wäre, aber diese
But this discussion is not over, and I am not taking part in it. We have an individual right to asylum. I don't question that, but I do question the abuse of it. We have to fight this to the best of our abilities, and that's why I am fighting so hard against this kind of illegal migration. And this isn't something we're only doing in Germany. If you take a look at the current debate in the UK, you'll see that the left-wing government is doing everything it can to show it's taking a tough stance on the question of migration. You'll notice that many in Europe have recognized that migration, illegal migration, is a trigger point for radical parties, which is why politics must address it differently.
Was Germany's Interior Minister there speaking with us. Well, since taking office earlier this year, Germany's conservative-led government has intensified its rhetoric on immigration, pledging to return more people to their countries of origin. Hundreds of thousands of recent immigrants came here legally, however, a decade ago when Germany opened its borders to those fleeing the civil war in Syria. Since then, many have built stable lives and careers here. Well, now German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says that Syria is safe enough for people to return to, but many Syrians remain reluctant to leave the country that they have come to know as home.
Over the past decade, many Syrians have made Berlin and Germany their home, and the overwhelming majority has achieved a legal status that grants them a right to stay. Of the roughly 1 million Syrians that currently live here, only a very small number could actually be deported. 46 who are classified as security threats suspected of planning serious crimes. 920 who are required to leave after their asylum claims were rejected. And 9,780 who are also required to leave but cannot be deported due to severe illness or missing travel documents. So, for the vast majority of Syrians, the issue is voluntary return. That, however, seems to be unappealing to many.
Right now, returning to Syria is difficult, but in the future, we all want to return to our cities. If you're a troublemaker and your record is not clean, they have the right to send you back.